What's the word, y'all? What's the word? Welcome to the best wrestling podcast in the world, the Say I Quit podcast. It's your boy Lil Derek. I got Lance Hardy Jr. with me. I got Reed Starks with me, and we got a very, very special guest
Come
again
on.
today. We
Yeah.
got one half of the MLW Tag Team Champions,
Come on. Show it.
Yeah, you
Donovan
gotta show
What's going
Dijak.
on? How are you?
Yeah.
Oh man, Jack, don't flex on us like that.
Oh,
Hey.
sorry about
So, as an icebreaker, and one of my favorite questions to ask anybody in professional wrestling, we've interviewed a lot of different indie wrestlers. We just interviewed D'Lo Brown, but one of my favorite questions is to ask is what was that moment? What was it? Was it a childhood dream of yours? What made you want to become a professional wrestler?
Mm.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was never really like a specific moment per se. Well, that's not true. It wasn't like a dream sort of moment. It just kind of it was a series of events that kind of took place.
Mm.
Like I was a pro wrestling fan growing up, starting in 1998 when I was about 10 years old. And then, throughout the course of my middle school and high school years, I was a huge pro wrestling fan. I went to a ton of, local shows and WWE shows and things like that. And it was always something that I was a backyard wrestler like everybody else in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Um, so it was always something that I thought I would be pretty good at, but it just seemed like that sort of uh I don't know how to describe it. It just seemed like something that was not for me, if that makes sense. Like I felt like I would be very good at it, but I just you needed to be in the right place at the right time and I just wasn't, right? That's sort of how
Yeah.
it felt to me. And then, my sort of sports career took off and I started, focusing on that from about 2003 till 2010, which is when I graduated from college.
Mm.
And that's kind of when I started watching wrestling again as a fan because I had more free time now that I wasn't playing sports full time anymore.
All right.
And yeah, once that took place, like again in my mind, I was like, this is something I'd be pretty good at. But now I'm too old. Now now it's like it just it wasn't even a thought that crossed my mind really. There was never the thought like, oh, I should try being a pro wrestler. It's just something that I always assumed I would be pretty good at, but didn't have the means or opportunity to do so. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and frankly, I wouldn't even know where to start. Right. I didn't know that you went to a school. I didn't know that. I thought there was maybe like one or two schools and you had to go to Stu Hart's dungeon and like drop your life and get tortured or whatever. Like that's what my vision of professional wrestling was. And you had to be like 16 years old and, be on the road, living out of your car or whatever. That's what I thought being a pro wrestler was. So I was like, I don't want to do any of that. Um, yeah, and it didn't really become a possibility until through a series of events. I found the school that I'm currently a trainer at, which is the New England Pro Wrestling Academy in North Andover, Massachusetts. And I just kind of stumbled upon the existence of it. And from there, I reached out to the owner and head trainer, who is my good friend now, Brian Fury, and my trainer, Brian Fury, and yeah, I think I reached out to him maybe on like a Thursday, and I was visiting class on a Saturday. So it all happened very quickly once I found out that it was a feasible option. So yeah, there was no real moment where I like watched a match and said, "Oh, I have to be a pro wrestler." It
Yeah.
was just more like a series of things that just kind of fell into place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
More fate, basically.
Yeah,
It's something that you were destined to do, even if you didn't realize it as
yeah.
a kid. Like some people have those moments, but
Mhm.
for other people like you, it's also that like those series of events just have to happen. Especially a big key I think you had was like not knowing where to start. I think it's so many places where like you don't have these big wrestling schools like the dungeon and things like that people
Right.
know where to go to even get trained.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interestingly enough, like the reason I found out about the New England Pro Wrestling Academy is because it was associated with Killer Kowalski's. and I'd heard of Killer Kowalski's, but I never knew that that was like the only reason I'd heard of it was because I heard that, Triple H trained there and
Yeah.
China trained there, right? I didn't know where they were from. I just and come to find out they trained on Pleasant Street in Malden, Massachusetts, which was where I was working at the time. So I was like, oh, what a coincidence. Unfortunately, it had moved to North Andover, Massachusetts, like I mentioned. But again, that's kind of even closer to where I was living at the time. So it was really only about a 35-minute drive from me, which I was very fortunate. And I was
Yeah.
extremely fortunate that Brian is such an incredible trainer that, because for every one good school, there's 100 bad schools. So I really kind of got lucky in a sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
So you got your start off in chaotic wrestling, is that correct?
that is correct. Yes.
Tell us about that journey and like how that even became part of your story at this point.
Sure. So chaotic wrestling is very close, still very closely tied with the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. So much so that the school used to be called the Chaotic Training Center until they rebranded it in 2009 or 2010, I think, which was a little bit before when I started. But yeah, the ties between at this point it's the exact same owner. For a long time it was the same owner of both Chaotic and the school, and then the owners became two separate entities, but still very closely linked. And now it's back to being the same owner of Chaotic as the same owner of the New England Pro Wrestling Academy. So there's always been a very close tie there. It's always been a very strong correlation. Yeah, it's the kind of promotion that that doesn't make like dramatic waves in terms of indie buzz or things like that,
Yeah.
but what it does do is it tells consistent stories and it develops talent at a record pace, probably like no other independent company ever has, from a grassroots perspective, right? In terms of the people who've trained in the chaotic system from day one and then have gone through chaotic wrestling and then graduated on to major television companies. It's just an endless list. We're up to about 20 or 25 people at this point. The school's only been around for less than 20 years. So yeah, it's a lineage that we're all incredibly proud of, and it just keeps going, right? I mentioned that I'm a trainer there now. Today's Tuesday. I don't know when people are watching this, or it's live, so some people are watching it live, right? But if you're watching a recorded version of it, we're filming this on a Tuesday, and the school's open right now. But I'm a trainer on Wednesday night, so I'll be there tomorrow night in North Andover. If you want to visit neprowrestling.com, that's not the word any, but NE as in New England
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
prowrestling.com.
Yeah.
And you can sign up. You can sign up to be a professional wrestling student. And I will be your head trainer if you're there on Wednesdays.
It's dope that you mentioned that legacy. I could be wrong, but was it your last match at Chaotic that was against Christian Casanova and Josh Briggs?
Yes, before I went to WWE. Now I
Right,
regularly
right.
work for
Mm.
Chaotic
Yeah, yeah, but
Wrestling.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, that was one of my final matches on the independent scene. My last sort of couple weeks in on the independents in 2017 before I started with WWE consisted of that triple threat you mentioned for the New England championship for Chaotic Wrestling was and it was my third to last promotion that I worked for. My
Right.
second to last promotion was against Tim Thatcher
Mm.
for Progress Wrestling, who was running in New York City. And for the people who were there at that show, it was the hottest, like not like crowd wise, but like in terms of temperature, it was the hottest venue anyone's ever been in. So much so that people were literally passing out in the crowd. It's kind of, and we were the second to last match to go on, so it was absolutely brutal. And then my final promotion that I worked for was Pro Wrestling Gorilla in California.
BWG. Yep.
I
Yep.
had I had three matches for them. It was my debut for BWG and my sort of last hurrah for BWG all at the same time. We had a tag match. It was myself and Keith Lee against
Keith
Jeff
Lee. Yep.
Jeff Cobb and Matt Riddle, which was a great tag match. I had a singles match with Trevor Lee, who ended up coming to WWE as well afterwards as Cameron Grimes. And then my last independent match before I signed with WWE at that point was myself Keith Lee in the Battle of Los Angeles 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
that's correct.
I wanna I
That's a
wanna
classic
double.
match. That's a
Hey,
classic
hey,
match.
Thank you.
you and Keith Lee have some amazing matches, and I want to double back to those, but I
Some of the
don't
best.
want to skip over your ROH
Sure.
tenure. I
Yeah.
feel like very, very interesting
Mm.
run in ROH in 2015. You won the top prospect tournament.
That's
What
right.
was that experience like for you, winning that, coming off of that, getting to work with Jay Lethal and Prince Nana, and just
Mhm.
everything that you got to do in ROH?
It was good. It was very good for me. It was an incredible learning experience. Um, and yeah, the amount of people that I was able to wrestle and be around and learn from in my time in Ring of Honor. I mean, there's so many matches. Um, it's funny because Ring of Honor worked at that point in this sort of interesting format where there was a lot of house shows, which is kind of weird to think about, but Ring of Honor was running a lot of house shows at that point
Mm.
where you would like film it sort of for the DVD, even though DVDs were sort of dying at that point.
hmm
I think you could watch it on like Honor Club or whatever the version of Honor Club was back then. But yeah, it was kind of hard to find them as opposed to the television show, which was becoming easier to find, right? We were on Destination America, and here in New England, we were on Nesson at one point. So like it was getting more and more eyes, but that was just the TV show. Whereas on the house show loop, I was getting so much experience, right? I wrestled the Young Bucks multiple times. I wrestled AJ Styles. I was wrestling, Michael Elgin
Uh,
consistently. I wrestled Jay Lethal a bunch. I had a whole feud with Jay Lethal. The Briscoe brothers. I got to work with the Briscoe brothers and specifically Mark a number of times. So yeah, it was just an unbelievable learning experience for me at a time when it was right in my formative years. I was very lucky and persistent to be able to get that spot in Ring of Honor at a time when they were, just absolutely stacked. I mean, the roster was just overflowing with people who are still to this day consistently on television in top
yeah.
top spots. So yeah, for me at like I think I was like 2 years in or something when I was signed with Ring of Honor. So to get that experience that early on in my career, I was very, very fortunate. So yeah, that it was a very important time in my formative years as a professional wrestler.
So coming off of getting all that experience, it's obvious that word got up to people in WWE about just the amazing things that you were doing in ROH, and it's I just want to see if you confirm, is it a fact that WWE pretty much offered you a contract and then Ring of Honor threatened to sue WWE if you like jump ship?
Yes, I wouldn't say
That's
threatened. I wouldn't say threatened. I think they did, if I'm not mistaken.
oh no.
And let me um, add uh, a side note to that. This was not about me, right? It
Mm.
was not about me specifically. It was about
Yeah.
a group of us.
Mhm.
But the biggest name in the group of five was Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly at the time
Yeah.
because Kyle was Ring of Honor World Champion. So like the
Yeah.
in terms of me, I don't think anyone cared about me. I don't think Ring of Honor was like, oh my god, you better not take Dijak from it. Like I was a very small fish in comparison to Ring of Honor World Champion Kyle O'Reilly, who was wrestling. If anyone remembers their Ring of Honor history, let me just give you a quick side note. The way the business model worked at that time, um, and you can look up a lot of this. A lot of this is on the record. But Sinclair Broadcast Group owned Ring of Honor at that point, and for whatever reason, all the contracts were structured exactly the same, and that's that they would turn over as the calendar year turned over, right? So
Mhm.
you'd have to renew before January 1, right? And the way that the pro wrestling calendar works, especially with Ring of Honor, and even more specifically with New Japan Pro Wrestling, which was very closely linked at that time, was
hmm
they have their biggest show of the year on January 1st or 2nd or whatever. It's Wrestle Kingdom, right? And Ring of Honor's biggest show of the year is right at the end of December. It was Final Battle, or
hmm
maybe the middle of December. So basically, what was happening here is there was 5 of us, right? The Undisputed Era, those 3, not Roddy, but the 3 besides Roddy, and then Leo Rush and myself. Those were the 5 people who were, you know, our contracts were up again because everybody's contract was up on
Yeah.
January 1. But more importantly, Kyle was the world champion. Adam Cole was feuding with him for the world championship.
Yeah.
So they were, I think I think what was happening, this is speculation. I don't know any of this. I have no insider baseball
Yeah.
information
Yeah.
on any
Yeah.
of
We
this.
get you. We get you.
But from what I could see from the outside looking in, was they had set up this feud between Kyle and Adam, and they weren't sure like who to give the belt to. So I think they were like trying to court both of them to stay or something by like giving them the championship in some capacity and giving them these Wrestle Kingdom events. But the reality was obviously that they never re-signed, and I think their plan in hindsight was to go to WWE. And obviously, Ring of Honor took massive offense to that and said, "Well, you've been talking to our talent uh, while they're still under contract," which absolutely they were talking to the talent under
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah.
Because as a talent, like, what do I do? Right? I'm sitting there with my contract up on this day, and like I have no word from Ring of Honor that I'm planned on being renewed or we're offering you this or anything like that. So I'm just supposed to sit there and go, well, I hope I have a job on January 1st. So the whole thing is a very big gray area of legality, and I guess Ring of Honor really pushed it with their
Yeah.
Sinclair broadcast lawyers. The reason I'm telling all this is because it kind of screwed me over in a in a way back in 2017, because my wife was pregnant with my first child, my son, who's 8 years old now. If you do the math, I just put him to bed, um, but uh, but yeah, my wife was pregnant with him, and I was not a wealthy person. Like the Ring of Honor contracts at that point, the starter rookie contracts were not like big money. They were appearance based and not a ton. So we
Yeah.
were not well off at that point financially. But my wife was pregnant, and we had to plan a move to Orlando, right? Because it was confirmed from WWE that they wanted me there.
Yeah.
And so we're planning this whole life changing move. And now all of a sudden, WWE is contacting us and being like, hey, this may or may not happen. And we can't say anything more to you because we're legally not allowed to talk to you. So for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and I'm no longer with Ring of Honor, by the way. They've cleaned their hands of me and wrote me off. So now I've gone from I have 2 choices to now I maybe have 0 choices, and my wife is pregnant, and I don't know if I need to move, and like it just
Yeah.
kind of
It's a
flipped my
lot.
real life into turmoil. So I wasn't thrilled about that, but I understand business decisions and all that stuff. So I'm not like personally angry at anyone. I don't even know what
Yeah.
person was responsible for any of that. I just know it kind of sucked at the time. I was supposed to start with WWE in April of 2017. I ended up starting in September of 2017. As it turns out, WWE didn't really have a plan for me, regardless, at that point, because I ended up doing, a year's worth of not much in WWE. So it ended up kind of working out in a way because I got those cool matches, like I said, like the PWG debut, and I got to wrestle Marufuji, and I had a really good
Yeah.
summer. It was one of my better summers in terms of independent professional wrestling. But yeah, that's kind of the whole story, and from my perspective anyway, and how it worked out.
So fast forward to your NXT, your first stint in NXT. You know,
Yep.
you were a part of Team Ciampa versus the Undisputed Era. That's a nice tie back to your ROH days.
Yeah.
Classic.
And you
Classic.
end up going on a run of 2 more matches against Keith Lee that I think if you weren't
All
already
time.
on
All time.
people's radar, I think
Mhm.
those were the 2 matches, especially for WWE fans, people that
Yeah.
mostly watch WWE and don't know anything about your ROH run or that PWG match.
Yeah.
Those matches against Keith Lee were the ones that really show like, damn, this guy, he can really go. So speak on the chemistry between you and Keith Lee. Is that something that's always been there? And do you have any cool Keith Lee stories?
Yeah. So the I guess chemistry is a good word to describe it. Um, at that point, before those matches that you're describing, Keith and I had wrestled, I think, like 12 times on the indies, which is completely unheard of, right? That PWG match that we talked about, that was like our 12th match
Hmm.
on the independent scene, which is that's that like especially at that point, that's kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous. Because like not a lot of them were in the same company. It wasn't like we wrestled each other in Ring of Honor. We didn't wrestle each other in Ring of Honor at all. We wrestled each other in Beyond Wrestling, Evolve, Northeast Wrestling, PWG, Wrestle Circus. It was all over the country, like all over the world, right? And that was just completely unprecedented at that point. So we were completely familiar with each other, and we were good friends also. Like we hung out outside of wrestling. It was the whole thing was built on trust, right? I always trusted him, and he always trusted me, and we had the same goals in professional wrestling, and that was to just get absolutely the most out of every single scenario. There was zero selfishness, never, not for a split second did he or I ever feel any sort of animosity towards the other one in
Mm.
terms of who was winning and who was losing and who was getting the championship. To us, it always felt very mutual. And we're still, very good friends to this day. The best story I can tell you about Keith was the first time I ever met him, which was at Beyond Wrestling, which is a company I still, work very closely with. I have a big show with them coming up next Friday. So, and the first time they gave me the opportunity, it's funny because I was on. I'm friends with Drew Cordero, who's the promoter of Beyond, and he was texting me when I was on my first tour in Europe, and and I had just wrestled a guy who's actually one of my best friends in the world, Big Damo. He was Killian Dane
Yep. Yep.
in Sanity, and I had just wrestled him in England, and and Drew messaged me because we were having this show called Gigantic, where he wanted to feature a bunch of large professional wrestlers, and he was bringing in both Damo and Keith. And I hadn't heard much about Keith. I recognized the name a little bit because he had done some dark matches for Ring of Honor,
Mm.
and I knew he always got a huge reaction because he did this big dive. But other than that, I just knew him as like he was a member of the Pretty Boy Killers with Shane Taylor, and they were
Yeah.
getting. I hadn't seen really the matches. I'd only heard them because they're dark matches, and I'm getting ready for my match. So you always hear this huge pop, and you're like, "What was that?" And they're like, "Keith Lee did a dive," and I was like, "Oh, that's crazy." But that's the most I knew about him, right? I didn't know if he was a good wrestler. I didn't know if he had good matches. I didn't know anything. I just knew he was a big dude who did a sweet dive. Um, so Drew messaged me and he was like, "Hey, do you want to wrestle Big Damo or do you want to wrestle Keith Lee?" And I was like, "Oh, I just wrestled Damo and he was excellent. So I'll have another match with Damo." And he's like, "Okay, cool, sounds good." And then I was sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, Beyond Wrestling is like that's like the company where like I've been given like all of these chances to like do something unique and stand out. I mean, they're really the first, even before Ring of Honor. Obviously, Chaotic Wrestling like believed in me a lot, but Beyond Wrestling was like the super indie of the area. So they were the
Mhm.
ones who had like the budget to like bring people in and like show. Like my matches were like Eddie Edwards, Jonathan Gresham. They were like bringing in all these names. I was like the guy that they did that for, which was great, and I was super thankful. And I was like, you know what, this has always been the platform for like that kind of like let's show them something new. So I was like, I'm gonna try something new. I'm gonna gamble here, and I messaged Drew like a couple hours later. I was like, actually, I changed my mind. Let's try Keith Lee, and he was like, okay, sure, sounds good. So I met Keith and we were just talking about the match, and I remember it was like this ridiculous light bulb moment. We were standing outside of I think it was Aurora, which is a small nightclub in Providence, Rhode Island, and we were just out back, just talking to each other about what the match was going to be. And he's like, "Yeah, I do this and this," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm kind of a bad guy, but I get cheered sometimes." So it's like, so I was trying to explain to him the dynamic. He's like, "Okay, that's cool." I'm like, "But let's shine you up regardless." I'm like, "What do you do?" He's like, "I can do this," and I do a drop down leapfrog, and I'm like, "Drop down leap," and you have to remember this is like a 350-pound guy, just huge dude, just like very strong, like visibly strong and large. So I have a vision of what he can do, and it's not that. And then he's like, yeah, and then he's like giving me options, right? Like I'm ordering candy off a list or something. And he's like, yeah, and then when you're down there, I can do this and that. And he's like, or I could just hit you with like a standing moonsault or something. And I remember he says like two more things, and I'm like, I'm sorry, can I pause you for? And like we're not friends, and I've never met him, I don't know him. I'm like, did you say you'd hit me with a standing moonsault? And he's like, yeah, standing moonsault. I can do a standing moonsault, no problem. And I was like, of course, yeah, yes, we're gonna do a standing moonsault. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, are you like a professional athlete or something? He's like, yeah, I played D1 football at Texas A&M. I'm like, okay, well, all right, well, you need to tell me everything you can do because we're gonna do all of that. And I was like, I can do this dive, and he's like, I can do this dive. And we were like, two kids in the candy store telling each other what we could do. I think neither of us could really believe what the other one was saying, and then we went out and did it, and I was like, "Oh shit!" They were, the other one was telling the truth, right?
So, yeah, we get busy. We get busy.
It just became like what? Tell me everything you can do, and I would tell him everything I could do, and we would just think of the most creative, crazy shit in the world. Because like, who else am I gonna like do I can do a Fosbury flop or a springboard acai moonsault. And like I'm bigger than like 99.99% of people I'm wrestling. So like when someone's like, yeah, I can catch you out of the air when you do a moonsault, that's unheard of for someone my size. But with him, it becomes a reality. So it's like, well, now we're off to the races. And we're both very creative thinkers. So and then the fact that, people saw that match and loved it and wanted to, bring it on the road, it just gave us like endless opportunities to be able to, create and perform and practice and things like that. So by the time we got to those matches on the takeover stage, we were so comfortable with each other that it was less of a question of like what kind of reaction is this going to get, and it's like, hey, let's have the greatest match of all time, right? That was kind of our baseline, and see where we could get from there.
Yeah. So what were you thinking at that point in time when you had to do the chair spot at takeover with Keith?
It's funny you asked that. So my original idea for that, I came into it that day. We had a lot of because the way the Performance Center works is you're with each other every single day. And we knew our agent was Johnny Moss, who's a guy that I was when I mentioned that tour I did where I wrestled Damo, I went out of my way to train with Johnny Moss in northern England because I knew he's such an incredible trainer. And I was fortunate that he was my producer for that match because he was like, you guys do whatever you want. And I was like, perfect, sounds good. So we kind of had a lot of it designed going into it. And for that particular spot, my idea was I'll get you over the guardrail and I'll do the Mike Awesome dive. You ever seen Mike Awesome's dive where he does a front flip dive into the crowd?
Yeah.
I wanted that, but I wanted a spring because I knew I could do a springboard front flip. I wanted that into the crowd. And usually on NXT, the barricades are pretty close. But for this specific takeover, the layout of it had the barricades like further. And so by the time we gauged it out, because of the announce tables or whatever, we were like, I can't reasonably get him over the guardrail and jump from the ring over the guardrail. There's no way. It's 20 feet or whatever it was. So we're just standing out there looking around at stuff, and it's like, what can I do? What can we do instead of this dive? And I came up with the chair. I'm like, what if I grab the announcer's table or announcer's chair and put you in the announcer's chair and dive onto you in the announcer's chair? And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And so we put that together maybe 3 hours before we did it. So obviously no practice, right? I can't practice a springboard swanton, and he can't practice catching a 260-pound missile coming at him. So like it was just kind of something that we knew we could trust each other to do. And I came up a hair short, and of course Keith is the strongest guy in the history of the world. So he grabbed my legs and just pulled me, like basically like reverse power bombed me, so I didn't like land on my neck and die. He's just, the level of trust that we have for each other is just it doesn't get higher than that. So yeah, that's kind of the way that came together.
I'm gonna watch that back, and I'm just gonna think of what you said, and just apply it when I watch it again, and be like, all right, now that's.
You know what I want? When you watch it back, I want you to take notice of something. My goal when I hit him with the super kick in the chair was to get in the ring and do the springboard as quickly as possible because I thought the transition of getting into the ring was kind of awkward and weird. And I wanted it visually to be super kick, sell, reaction, and then all of a sudden I'm just flying into screen. Like I wanted people no time to be like, why did he get in the ring? What's he doing? What's he I just wanted them to see and it's like the fastest I've ever done it. Like the super kick happens, and before the crowd is done, the camera pans over and I'm already jumping on the top rope. It's the craziest thing.
I'll look at that. I'll look
Yeah,
into
please
that.
do.
I know you had a question for him, Les.
Well, I really wanted to ask you about um well, earlier on when you were talking about, being on the indies and just even coming up in the business.
Yep.
I wanted to know, like, really any advice that you have for upcoming wrestlers and also people in NXT, people on the indies, because we're all independent rappers, like we're all underground rappers, and we always accustom like rapping and coming up in the game to wrestlers. We hear it all the time. So I just want to know because we could always use that advice as well.
Okay, I got two pieces of advice. Number one goes for everything in life. Every person, every people always ask me for advice. I do a lot of cameos, right? Because I reprice my cameos at a much more affordable rate. So I get a lot of those now. People asking for advice. I always give the same advice, and it's similar advice that I've heard John Cena give people whenever people ask, and that's focus on what you can control. Right? He says control the controllable. Right? Because so much time is spent in pro wrestling, but in our lives in general, where we hyper focus on things that we can't control, right? Things we have no control over, right? What someone else is doing, how much success they're getting. Why am I not having the same success as them? Why did this happen? Why am I sick right now? All of that stuff is not under our control. All we can control is what we do about it, right? And that's where our focus should be, right? And I understand that this is much easier said than done, right? I've suffered from it myself. I know everybody else does, right? Where your mind hyper focuses on someone else and what they're doing or the things that you're not getting or whatever it happens to be. I understand that happens, but having the perspective to understand, like I'm thinking about things I can't control right now. How do I reshift my focus onto something I can control? Right? That's the magic trick, right? That's the ticket. The most important advice that I can give any person in terms of wrestling specifically. For me, with the benefit of hindsight, and I think this applies to a lot of different things, like you mentioned, your music aspirations and things like that. I was always in a huge rush, a huge rush, right? I was 25 years old when I started pro wrestling, and I said, "Oh my God, I have to be signed by the time I'm 30. Oh my God, I have to like I." And I'm not saying don't have aspirations and don't push for them, right? But sometimes you're in such a rush that you end up bypassing what would have been, better opportunities or more learning experiences just in the pursuit of getting what you desperately want, and you end up missing out on some of the things that could have given you a better path towards achieving your goals, right? So for me, if I could give advice to my younger self, it would be like, just slow down, right? Take your time in terms of uh absorbing the context of what you're doing, while also having those dreams and pushing for those dreams and always reaching and striving, but don't be in such a rush, right? Because the rush part of it is where you start skipping over important beats, and then maybe you look back in hindsight and those beats might have been more important to your journey, right? So that's my sort of two-pronged advice.
Thank you.
I'll give a clap for that one.
No,
Yeah, that
I
was
appreciate
immaculate.
that. We
Dude,
Yeah,
appreciate
we
that.
really
I think
do.
I needed to hear that.
Yeah,
For real, I
definitely,
did.
definitely. We know you're a busy man, Dijak. Do you have time for like two more quick questions?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So first and foremost, it's something that I've seen a lot of fans talking about on Twitter as of late. The difference that we see between wrestlers when they're in NXT and
Yep.
when they're on the main roster.
Sure.
Is there any, and I'm talking about moveset wise, of course. Is
Yeah.
there any validity to the thought that maybe some of the producers or people in WWE are asking wrestlers to kind of tone it down when they come to the main roster?
So that's an interesting question. That maybe I'm not the best person to answer because my experience was going from Triple H and Shawn Michaels Black and Gold NXT to Vince McMahon Monday Night Raw.
Mm.
And so for me, there was no question I needed to tone it down, right? And I was changed to T-Bar from Retribution. So for me, not only did I feel like this is probably in my best interest, but like I probably should as a character presentation, right? Because like T-Bar from Retribution, I wanted to be different than I didn't want to just do as much of Dominic Dijakovic as I possibly could because like that then it's just going to be a bad ripoff. It's going to be a bad representation, right? So I wanted to be something completely different. So I shaved my head. I bulked up. I didn't change my moveset per se, but I whittled it down to just power moves. I don't think I did a dive or a flip or a moonsault in the entirety of the time that I was T-Bar. I wanted to be grounded. Again, because I thought that would appeal more to Vince McMahon. I know he's a very sort of fundamental, old school, bad guys get heat, heels get heat sort of thing. So you shouldn't be doing flashy moves, pal. Like that. That's what I assumed he would say to me.
Mm.
Especially considering, the anecdotes I had heard, right? I had the great fortune of wrestling Luke Harper, the great Brody Lee, in one of his final WWE matches, maybe his final singles match. And I heard, not from him, but I heard through the grapevine that he was so proud of that match with me, and I was so proud of that match with him. It was very combined effort that he took that match and showed it to Vince, and Vince hated it. He said it was big guys doing things they shouldn't do. And that I again, this is all anecdotal. I didn't hear from Brody himself, unfortunately. I would love to have talked to him about it, but unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity before he passed. Um, but but yeah, I heard through the grapevine that was one of the catalysts. Okay, I don't want to be in WWE anymore because he put on what he felt was like his best performance and showed it to the boss, and the boss was like, "I don't like it. I don't care for it." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to take my game elsewhere." Right, which probably was a great decision for him, right? And he was doing incredibly well in AEW. And then obviously, there was a horrible situation that took place. But yeah, in terms of the move set and things like that, I just wanted to. It became an audience of one, right? My goal was to make the boss happy, but I also wanted, to separate church and state. I wanted people to look at T-Bar and not think of Dominic Dijakovic. Obviously, they did anyway because that became like the focal point of the whole thing. Again, it's in the middle of the pandemic and there's screens and we're in the Thunderdome, so you're hyper fixated on, it's a whole situation, a whole bag of worms. But so to answer your question, back then, very much so, yes. I wouldn't say the producers as much, but definitely like it felt like intrinsically like I should probably do this.
Yeah.
And we've all heard the rumors about Vince, and we kind of know how he operates and things like that. Now I think it's more different. Again, I was on the main roster under Triple H for 5 weeks or whatever, and it seemed pretty similar to NXT to me at the point. But the handcuffs at this point to me, and handcuffs is probably not a great term, but the limitations are less about who's running the show and more about what the show is, right? Monday Night Raw is a completely different beast than NXT. Even though they're similar, even though the format is similar, even though it's the same guy who's running both versions, you got to remember that Monday Night Raw isn't really a pro wrestling show. It's like a soap opera that features
Yeah,
pro
it's
wrestling.
Netflix now.
Right. Yeah. So even that is different. You got to
Even more so
answer
than it used
to
to be.
you got to answer to Netflix executives and things like that, right? They get so much more mileage out of a CM Punk and LA Knight promo than they do of a Dominic Dijakovic, doing all sorts of high spots. That's just the way that the broader audience works. So that's something to keep in mind when you're watching, a match, even if it's a match that gets a bunch of time, and it's like, hey, these are the these are the work rate guys, and here comes a great work rate match. You still got to understand that context is a big part of that. And maybe they have a big feud coming up, and maybe it's going to pay off on a pay-per-view or whatever. If you watch the pay-per-views, everyone's doing everything, right? There's no, it's not like Vince McMahon pay-per-views where it's like, let's save this and maybe don't do that. And now, if you watch the pay-per-views, everything's everyone's trying to have a takeover match, as far as I can tell. So to me, that's where the parallels are more closely aligned in terms of that. But no, I to answer your question, no, I never experienced a producer or anyone being like, "Hey, tone it down" or anything like that. Not really. No. Sometimes they would be the bearer of bad news, right? They'd tell me like, "Hey, Vince said do this, and Vince said do that," and Vince. That's not them. They're just delivering the message, right? And Vince had all sorts of crazy, work a chin lock for 12 minutes. Okay, all right, fine. Like I'm not gonna say no because like I have to do my like Jinder Mahal did Chris Van Vliet, and he said that he told specifically like Vince just wanted him to work chin lock. So like that's out there. That's on the record. So yes, Vince would definitely tell you to like tone it down. But the producers, no. I never like talked to Adam Pearce, and Adam Pearce was like, maybe don't do cool moves. No, if Vince was okay with it, he was okay with it. Like they didn't care at all.
Makes sense. Sense. And to quickly dig into that bag of worms, I can vividly remember the SmackDown when Retribution essentially debuted without a name, took out everybody, destroyed everything. It looked like it was about to be one of the coolest things that we saw in WWE in a really, really long time.
Well, hold on. you're skipping over you're skipping over pieces of it, okay? Because Retribution was like in waves, right?
Yeah.
So the very, very, very first debut of Retribution was on Monday Night Raw, and it was a mess. It was these hastily filmed backstage vignettes where it was like it looked like a bunch of children like throwing Molotov cocktails and like dancing because they blew up like a fake generator that doesn't really exist. It was very poorly received. And by the way, I wasn't part of that at that point. There was a whole month or 2 months of Retribution vignettes I weren't. And then there was the thing where they destroyed the SmackDown set. That was a little bit better, right? Still, the pieces weren't in place, and there's. I know through the grapevine I've figured out who a lot of the people under those masks were. A lot of it was extras, referees, and even some writers, right? So they did not have wrestlers doing it. So that right there,
that makes no sense.
Right. So on the one hand, yes, it makes no sense. On the other hand, they didn't know what wrestlers they wanted to use yet, so they didn't want to just throw wrestlers in there and be like, "We're changing it." And I get it, but that was part of the motivation of why I was pressing so hard, because I was like, "Hey, I've got 6 people. I got 6 names. We're all trained wrestlers. We can do this stuff really, really well because it is good, right? Like beating up the announcers and cutting the ropes and smashing all that stuff is great. Let some wrestlers do it so we can make it violent and real and all that stuff. And then we can progress the story and start to tell the story of like, hey, I used to be Dominic Dijakovic, but I was screwed over by Karrion Kross, and now I hate my best friend Keith Lee, and I want retribution against all of NXT and all of Triple H and Vince McMahon. I want retribution against everyone because I was screwed. Whatever, right? That's a story worth telling that I wanted to tell, and I thought we could do it very effectively. And it trended in that direction, right? We were doing good stuff once they populated it with wrestlers, and it started getting better and better. And we did a vignette on the first Thunderdome where we beat up Braun Strowman, and The Fiend was in there, and Vince was in there, and it got like 45 million views on YouTube. It was the most viewed thing. So it was all trending, and we were doing these backstage vignettes with these voice changing effects and things like that. And it was trending in a really good direction. And then we found the big reveal with the Bane masks, and our name was going to be T-Bar and Slapjack, and that's when we were like, uh-oh, this was going in a good direction, and now it's going in a not so good direction. And even after that, we debuted Ali and turned him heel, and then it started debuting in a good direction again. But then we got kicked from Fox, and that became USA exclusive, and that's when it really started to not go in a good direction. Because I feel like that's when Vince was like, all right, I can't do anything with this anymore, so I'm just gonna use them to put over the Hurt business, which is what we did. But you know, that's kind of the story of the beginning and the end of Retribution, all in this like 2-month window.
Thank you for that for sure. And you know, obviously you go on to NXT and have some banger matches. Wesley,
Yo,
The
really,
Ilya
really
match.
quickly, if you
Oh.
don't mind, that's what I wanted to say. If you
Oh.
got anything to say about that Ilya Dragunov last man standing match,
my
that's one
God,
of my favorite matches of all time.
Me too.
mine
Me
too,
too.
Thank
Me
you.
too.
mine
Honestly,
too.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud of that match. I'm very happy that it just so happened to be in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is a place where I debuted for Chaotic Wrestling, for example, probably 2 minutes down the road at the Lowell PAV from the Songus Center, which is where that match was, which is where TNA just ran. They ran that big Bound for Glory. That was
Yeah,
that
they
same
did. They sure did. Yeah, they did.
same arena in Lowell, Massachusetts. Yeah, I was so happy about all of the build that we had to that match and the amount of creative input that I was allowed to have in that match. One of my favorite parts of that match is the entrance, right? Because I knew it was 25 minutes from where I live. I live right on the border of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. So I knew that it was close and like I could have my family there. And I was like, yeah, but I'm like this horrible bad guy who's like trying to, torture this man and whatever. I don't want to like go ringside and like hug my kids and be like, look, everyone, it's my family. But I was talking to Sean about it. I'm like, can we do like a heel version of that? I've never seen that before. It's always like good guys that go and like have their family ringside. I'm like, can we do like a bad guy version of that? And this was a week before, not even a week. I pitched this to him on Tuesday after TV,
Mm.
and we ended up doing it on. I think that show was on a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a Sunday. So less than a week later, 5 or 6 days later, and he sat and thought for a moment, and he's like, he's picturing it in his head, and he's like, what if you? He's like, what if you go up to your kids and you tell your wife to, get them the hell out of here because it's going to be too violent? And I'm like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And to me, that adds so much more to the match because it brings a personal, emotional element, right? Like the whole vignettes leading up to it was like him talking about his son and trying to be there for him, but he needs to, fight in America, and he's like talking to him on the phone. And I was like, what a perfect contrast to that of me going up to my, my cute little daughter and my son and my wife, my beautiful wife, and be like, get them the fuck out of here. And I don't want you to see this shit. Blah, blah. And my wife's like all sad, and my daughter like is startled. And I'm like, what a perfect story that ends with, the good father murdering the bad father and standing tall at the end of the match. Because like, even though it's my hometown, right? Like the people were still behind him, and that's good storytelling, right?
Yeah.
We don't care that you're from here. We want good to triumph over evil, and I feel like that was a wonderful accessory to what ended up being, what was our goal, which was the most violent match we could possibly have.
man.
Fun, quick story about that. We were still, again, these takeover matches, especially with me, we were still discussing pieces of that like an hour or two in advance. And I remember one thing they were hung up on, and I was hung up on it as well. I was kind of digging my heels in on it. Was I wanted the build up to the kendo sticks to be done a certain way, and they is Sean and Matt Bloom, who are our producers. Fit Finley was our direct producer, but everybody kind of worked together to produce the match. They wanted a different vision of it, and I thought it was a little too telegraphed. And so I remember Sean came up to me and spoke to me sort of privately and directly, and he told me, he's like, listen, I'm going to let you do it the way that you want to do it. He's like, please just promise me that you'll limit it to 2 or 3 kendo stick shots, because he knows like how violent we are, we being myself and Ilya.
Yeah.
And he was afraid that I was going to look like I was just murdering a man on his program. And he, like, Sean's the guy who has to explain this like USA Network and producers, like, hey, by the way, like there was this bloody death match on our program for children. So you know, so I had to promise him that I'd limit it to like 3 kendo stick shots. I think I went a little. I think maybe I did 4 or 5, but I was planning on doing like 100. So I did dial it way back. But those, and I didn't plan on the blood, but he happened to be bleeding, and I rubbed it. Again, I don't know who he had to talk to or who he had to answer to. I know he was very happy with the match. I know Ilya, like, for some reason got hit in the wrist and his wrist like swelled up and he was a complete mess. We both were. We were both pretty beat up after that match. But our goal was the most violent match possible within the confines of what we did. And I think because of the emotional and sort of like face-to-face intimacy and the way that it was shot with the roaming camera there right in our face, I think we achieved that. So I think that's why that match is so special, because it's not about, and I tell this to my students all the time, it's not about what you do, it's about how you do it, right? So we made some strong choices in terms of what we were going to do in terms of violence, but in terms of how we did it, with the face-to-face, and I was, holding it to his neck and there was blood and I was rubbing myself with the like, you didn't need like a bunch of glass and blood gushing, just a little bit with the violence and the welts and the swollen head like that, and the face to face and the backdrop and the vignettes we got and the layer that kind of looks like this layer that I recreated where I'm trying to torture him. It just built the story to the point that told it that in that moment, like, I don't need to say the words, I don't need to try to kill you, I don't need to say I'm going to kill you, right? You can just see it in my eyes that, like, hey, that's a guy who's trying to kill another man, right? And then and then he had the same feeling on me when he gave me the death blow at the end of the match. And I think that was the story. So you tell the story without being so on the nose with it. I think that's a subtle storytelling art. So I'm very proud of that match. Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those quintessential matches that, like, people, because we're all, me, Les, and Derek, we love pro wrestling. Like, that's part of our lives now. We do this.
Yeah.
Where somebody's trying to get back into it, that's definitely one of the matches I always consider outside of the you and Keith Lee takeover.
I love I used to hate stipulation matches. Now I love stipulation matches because it's such an incredible opportunity to stand out. My goal going into that show was not like, let me have match of the night. Like, I knew I was going to have match of the night. My goal was to have the best last man standing match. My goal is to have the best last man standing match in WWE history. I don't know if we achieved that. One of my favorite last man standing matches in WWE history is Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Of course, they had much more production and bells. They used a forklift to lift the damn
forklift the ring up.
Unbelievable spectacle. But if I'm gonna rank WWE last man standing matches, and again, I haven't seen all of them, but from the greats that I have seen, I would put that one in the top 5 or so, which to me is an incredible
top three easily.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was our goal. And again, pro wrestling is subjective. So depending on what things you like. In terms of what I like, I achieved the goal for myself. So
imagine that match at SummerSlam, and then the tractor comes out.
Right.
It's just imagine all the production and everything for that. Match.
Production's nice. If you can get it, I love production. I don't get it very often. But I was able to get a very cool entrance, and I was happy about that, because for the longest time I was the guy whose music played and you just walk out and it's like, do something cool.
No pyro.
All I wanted was some fire and some bombs and some anything. So when they gave me the cool entrance with Dijak with the smoke and all that stuff, I was thrilled. I was like, thank you so much for finally giving me something cool.
It wasn't just like a commercial entrance.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. So we appreciate you. Like I said, I don't want to take too much more of your time. We appreciate you so much for even allowing us to ask a couple of extra questions.
Sure.
It's definitely been an honor and a privilege to talk to you. It's still so much that we would like to ask you. So we're gonna definitely have to bring you back onto the podcast one day, very soon. Like I said, it's your boy Lil Derek. It's Reed Starks. It's Les Hardy Jr. We got the king of awesome, one half of the MLW tag team champion.
Ratio God, the ratio God.
Oil up, Santi. Oil up, Santi.
It's been a while. ratioing doesn't feel the same without the direct interaction with Santi. So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had a good one in like a year, so I might have to retire the ratio, move on to something else. But thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
No
course.
We
problem.
appreciate you for your time. Thank you, Donovan
Oh
Dijak.
yeah.
Appreciate y'all tapping in, man. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. It's the Say I Quit podcast. It's too sick.